Welcome again to the Solar Festival webinar in Leo, and I'm very happy to welcome today Michael Robbins, who joined us today. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Alexander, and everyone.
Thank you so much, and I think it's I don't need to introduce you at all, and let your words and your wisdom speak for yourself.
Words and wisdom. Okay, we'll see what we can do. Thank you so much, and if you can put me on there, presenter, then I can get some of my stuff on.
I'm doing it right now.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
All right, show my screen, and let's see. Am I visible yet or not quite? Am I visible?
Yes.
Visible. Hi. Okay.
Okay.
Hi, everybody.
Your physical presence. Thank you. So the floor is yours.
Okay. Thanks so much, Andrew. And thanks so much, everybody, for attending. I think it's a wonderful initiative you have going, this 2025 initiative. It is, we know, the moment of the great hierarchical conclave, and the definite plans will be laid, we are told, in all probability, for the first stages of the externalization of the hierarchy, and then later will come the reappearance. So we all have to work as hard as we possibly can during this next 9-year cycle to prepare men's hearts and minds for this great event, for the externalization, for the conclave, and finally for the reappearance. I'm here in Finland in the Temple of Silence. We've been holding an initiation mystery week on behalf of the Blue Rose Sisterhood, and we have members of the Sisterhood attending, and we've been discussing the first couple of initiations, maybe 3. Have to stay within range, and my wife Tuya has been leading ceremonies in which we go deeper into these matters. This is, after all, the moment not only of the Leo full moon, which is coming up in just, I suppose, a day and, I don't know, a day and a half, something like that, but it is the Sirius festival as well. And Sirius is the great inspiration, so during the August, there's a particular festival which we know involves Shambhala and Sirius, and all new members of the hierarchy and the hierarchy as a whole are recognized at this festival. So it's a question of one's identity now as a member of the spiritual hierarchy. And we do know from some of those maps that if we really are an aspirant or a disciple, that somehow we are included in the great blue circle of hierarchy. So it's been a very deep time here, and I know it has been for you, and we try to bring that Sirian vibration, combining it with Leo. There's quite a connection, I think, between Sirius, the constellation Leo, and our solar logos. So Sirius is behind our whole initiatory process, and it feeds the solarization of the human being, and that's what we're trying to do, move from our lunar life instinctual tendencies into a far greater realization of the soul. Of course, it's not an overnight thing, and naturally we've been at this for many lives, thousands of lives really, changing our identity as we go. Now, you know, Sirius is a sacred solar logos. Our solar logos, Sol, if we want to call it that, or Helios, is not yet a sacred solar logos. I often use the analogy that as Sirius is to the sun, so Venus is to our earth, so the soul is to the personality. So we're trying to become solarized, and at this particular time with Leo, we can really place an emphasis upon our higher identity. Now, at first, you know, people pretty much identify with the I am consciousness. We'll see a few words from DK about that, but that is the personality consciousness, and that kind of thing goes on really for millions of years before we begin to sense, as the higher self, as the higher of the pairs of opposites comes into our view, that there is something else of which we are a part in some form of unity, united with each other in what we can only call that. And so then we have the I am that consciousness, and that is the consciousness truly of the disciple. We make a transition from our I am consciousness, which has a kind of a ring past knot of the personality and is rather isolated. We know how Leo is a sign of I-soul, S-O-L, isolation. But we begin to feel the unity, and the heart of the sun begins to be more active. There are three levels of the sun. There's three levels of identity, and we're moving from one to another. Now, I think most of us as disciples are moving out of that condition of I amness, where we feel maybe that the world revolves around us and that we are the only factor in our field of vision. You know, we all have a kind of a field of vision filled with contents of consciousness, and if we loom overly large in the center of that field, then we are certainly a personal self. And we have to learn how to go beyond that. But as disciples, we are beginning to enter into the I am that consciousness. And it's pretty much a stage that, well, maybe works from the first initiation up to the third initiation, maybe a little before. And then we enter something very, very interesting. And it is the third phase of Leo. Now, it's a certain oneness consciousness. You know, it kind of corresponds with Gemini in the third phase, the service of the whole. And the idea there is I am that, and that I am, or as it was more condensed in the Hebrew Bible, I am that I am. And it is not so much an identification with all of the different aspects and all of the different apparent parts. It is immersion in the wholeness. We have somehow managed to isolate the wholeness. And that is despite the fact that there's all kinds of variety. We never lose sight of the whole. So this is that stage of isolated unity, which is the keynote, finally, of the Master, and begins to be something that we can think about when the third initiation actually dawns. So, you know, we're going to talk a little bit tonight and use some DK quotes and so forth about isolated individuality, through which we have passed long, long millions of years from the time we first became aware of our separate selves as the observer, at individualization. So isolated individuality. Then we come to that stage of isolated identity. It's a much shorter stage, and it has to do with a period of time which lasts from the first initiation until the third. We know we are a soul. We begin to find out we are a higher self. However, we may still speak in terms of my soul and thy soul, as if they were separate things, but maybe a little bit unified and so forth. Finally, when the stage of isolated unity comes, we know there is no my soul and thy soul. And that's really something that at this time of the year needs to be stimulated by burning away all of the illusory differences between the contents of our consciousness. We begin to realize not only are we every one, we are everything, and there's only one being. We have isolated in our consciousness that one being, and no matter what goes on around us, and no matter what kind of variety we have, we manage to hold that isolated being with continuity. So I like to call that not only continuity of consciousness, I like to call that continuity of being. So in a way, these are our 6 subjects here. I am that, and I am that I am, or I am that, and that am I. and then isolated individuality, isolated identity, and isolated unity. Maybe the most important, well, if we could just begin to feel at this time of year this overwhelming unity which unites us all, and finally not only unites us all, but is all of us. If we could begin to feel that, it would be a wonderful thing. Because, you know, at this time of the Sirius Leo festival, so much can be burned away. You know, the star Sirius is sometimes called the Scorcher. It really is, it's a very strict kind of path, the path to Sirius. And maybe when we are, you know, monads and have made our decision at the 6th degree, 85% of us, in my estimation anyway, 85%, a great majority, will take that path to Sirius, which is very mysterious, a very difficult path, and also will make of us, those who take that path, into solar angels, who are basically trained on Sirius, and they come back. This is a very solar angelic time, if I can talk about that. The sense of contacting this inner angel under the guidance of Sirius, under the guidance of the sun, this is possible at this time. Believe it or not, I mean, I found this amazing reading in Cosmic Fire. Our solar logos himself has an immense solar angel connected with him who does for him what our solar angel on a much more minor method does for us, helps to connect us to our higher nature. And thus it is for our great solar logos. And all of our, and this is called the heart of the sun. You know, one of the definitions of the heart of the sun is the soul nature, or the egoic causal body of our solar logos. And all of our so-called little solar angels come from the heart of the sun, and they've been trained on Sirius, and they are supervising us for the duration, at least on this planet, until we can catch up to where we're supposed to be. We should be about as far developed as Venus, but we're not. So they have intervened, and they've helped us tremendously. At this time of year, at the Leo Festival, you get that tremendous solar vibration, that Sirian vibration, which helps us recognize these great inner beings that come from the heart of the sun. So if somehow, you know, we can tune in with Neptune, with Venus, Neptune, you know, the repository of the solar flames, directly connected with the heart of the sun. If we can tune in with that at the Leo Festival, we will have raised our level of appreciation beyond the ordinary physical sun into the soul nature of the sun and into our own soul nature. Now, you know, it's very interesting that the sequence of meditation actually begins in esoteric astrology with the sign Leo. And I'll just kind of run through this because it's easy to relate this sequence that begins with concentration and ends with identification. Okay, so when we are in the Leo phase in the beginning, we are able to gather the mind together and centralize it and focus at a point of tension. That's called concentration. Virgo takes us into meditation, where we can prolong our thought and we can analyze and we can think clearly in the light. Libra takes us into contemplation, where we begin to marry the subject with the object. If I'm sitting here and I think I'm the subject and I'm looking at an object and I think that object is different from what I am, then I am in error. So there's a way through contemplation to blend with the object that you may be seeing until you know that the essence of the subject and object are one, and that is called contemplation. Then Scorpio, even though it's a dark sign in many ways, gives us illumination, the illumination of the soul and of higher factors in our nature come into our consciousness. Sagittarius gives us the inspiration, the enthusiasm of breathing in the divine spirit, and finally Capricorn, initiation. Now, I've carried this a bit farther. I've said, okay, what does Aquarius give? What does Pisces give? Because I have to get to Pisces. I've got to get to Pisces. So Aquarius gives us universalization, where we really begin to embrace the wholeness of things. And finally, that subject for tonight is coming in through Pisces. It is identification, where you are absolutely merged in oneness with all things and realize there is no difference. Now, the thing about it's very interesting because Mercury is involved here. You know, and Mercury is that discriminative planet which helps us sort things out and know one thing from another. And in astrology, Mercury is so-called weakened in Pisces. It falls in Pisces. But this is another way of saying that it is so strengthened that it recognizes intuitively the oneness of all things. I am that I am that, and that I am. So we are involved in all of these processes, and probably all of us are somewhere a bit in the middle, you might say. We're not dealing with concentration. We can meditate. Whether we've achieved contemplation or not, that's another matter. The highest part of that would be the samadhi experience. Are we totally illumined? Probably not yet. Are we totally inspired? Probably not yet. Are we true initiates of the third degree? Probably not yet. And so we're on our way in this zodiacal sequence, which begins with Leo. But the fascinating thing about Leo is that it rules the first initiation. Well, you can find a place for Leo all the way along, but it definitely rules the first initiation, and it rules the fifth initiation. Now, I can also plug it in along the way and make sense of it, but let's just say when you're taking that first initiation and you really get to know yourself, that you have and are a higher self, it's Leo, okay? And by the time you get to the mastership, which is the fifth degree, the fifth sign, Leo, is involved, and you are now the sun. Your symbol is the sun. It's a circle with a dot, and the number 5 is exalted, and you have gone as far as you can, strictly speaking, as a human being. So Leo is the first, and Leo is the fifth, and we can find other ways to talk about it along the way, but I don't want to, get off the track. It's so easy to get off the track because there's so many things going on here. Okay, so this is a time when we celebrate our identity. Now, what are some of the things that DK says about this? I know some people, show pictures, but I'm just going to maybe look at a few quotes here from Master DK. He says, between the stages of isolated individuality, in which the average human being is walking and working, and thinking of himself as a separate being, we have to overcome separateness, and isolated unity, which is that of the master, lies one to which we give the name isolated identity. It is with this stage we are concerned and its esoteric implications. That's more the disciplic stage. Isolated identity, you are, well, it's a contradiction really, you are a soul, but you think of yourself as a distinct soul rather than as the one soul. Now eventually we'll get to know ourselves as the one soul. Isolated unity describes the stage which the master has reached. Isolated individuality is that of the disciple in the beginning, and then isolated identity with the soul. You identify as the soul, but not yet as the one, is that of the disciple up to and including the third initiation. Let's just assume that, a lot of us are around the first initiation, have either taken it or are about to take it, and as we move from the first to the third, isolated identity is what counts. So that is, and we can correlate that isolated individuality with I am. Isolated identity with I am that. Isolated unity with I am that and that I am. And really this takes practice. You're not going to wait for this to just dawn upon you. You have to practice seeing no difference. Now, a truly enlightened being, whichever direction that being looks, sees no difference. That doesn't mean the being is impractical and can't tell one thing from another in terms of their apparent distinction in the Mahamaya. I mean, because things look different and the contents of consciousness look different, and we have to handle things that look different. But underneath it all, we know it's only one being and only one substance. And we have to practice this all the time. Every day when we wake up, you know, the I am that I am. I am that and that I am. What is that that? It's so subtle. One has to get the feeling of this in your heart. This is what I always tell people. I say, well, this is how it works for me. If I identify something, I see it, I look at it. And then I get a vibration in my heart. I definitely stimulate my heart center, maybe the heart and the head, but certainly the heart. And I start to feel it in a heart way. And the next thing I know, something flashes, and the thing that I'm looking at becomes in my consciousness the same as the one who's doing the looking. I think that's what St. Francis said. What we are looking for is the one who's doing the looking. So, in other words, I am the seeker, I am the sought, I am the subject, I am the object, and when I can finally say, I am that I am, I contain both the subject and the object within myself. Now, obviously, nobody's going to jump there. You know, it can take lives to get there, and we have to practice this all the time. And I'm kind of writing a new book on this subject, which I call Seeds of the Infinite. And basically, it's just, you know, a bunch of seed thoughts which help give people an angle into the realization of this I am that and that am I, into a little piece of isolated unity, because before we are a master, we're not going to be achieving the real isolated unity. What does DK say here? He says, the first manifestation, the personality, and remember that it takes a long time before we even become a personality. You know, it takes a while. At first we're just, you know, physical consciousness, and then an emotional consciousness, and then a mental consciousness, long before we are a real integrated personality, even on the lower level. Anyway, the personality embodies the I am principle. The second manifestation, the ego, is embodying I am that principle. It begins to feel a unity. It begins to feel a relationship, a harmony with others. So harmony is on the fourth ray, unity is on the second ray. It begins to feel a connectedness with everything else, and when you look at somebody, you feel that old sense of separation, separativeness, or even hatred. There's so much of it in the world today. We're all so scared, you know. We're just driving things away from ourselves because we're frightened of them, we hate them. I always remember an old movie what I saw when I was 7 years old, and some Roman was saying to some other Roman, he was saying, man hates what he fears. And boy, it really hit me. You know, I was 7 years old at the time, and I thought fear is a great stimulation of hatred, but perfect love, we are told by Jesus or Christ, casteth out all fear. Okay, the third manifestation is that of the monad, and will embody in the next solar system, especially I am that I am. The I am that I am principle, especially in the next solar system. But let's say the disciples now on Earth are in the vanguard of the developmental wave of humanity, and they should already be showing some signs of appreciating that which goes on or will go on in the next solar system. Will we be in the next solar system? Maybe, but it will be a system of will in which what we normally call love will be the dweller on the threshold, just the way intelligence is now. It's a crazy idea, but apparently that's what's going to happen. Okay, so here DK says further in a treatise on white magic, just trying to take this in, he says, I am the cry of every human being. I am that, the cry of every personality who realizes his selfhood and uses his personality in order to express the will of the indwelling entity, the true person. This is, excuse me, this is not just a normal selfish personality. This is a personality who's waking up to the fact that inside his nature is this soul. So I am that is always going to relate to the soul, and you have to be aware of the higher of the pairs of opposites. Let's just say that people who are in AA and all that kind of thing, and they have their higher power, that's what that's all about, this higher entity, and they try to express it. I am that I am. The cry of the individual soul as it is lost in the whole and realizes its oneness with the soul or self of all. I find that so beautiful, and it's something that lies ahead of us. Now you might say, okay, look, that's just mystical consciousness, and we're interested in the things of the mind and what occultism really is. But let's put it like this. You've got to be a mystic, and you've got to be an occultist at the same time. You've got to be Uranus, and you've got to be Neptune at the same time. So we have to know the oneness and know all the detail at the same time. That's a tall order, it's a big job, but that's what is required that we do. Now, I say most of us would be, quite well served if we were dealing with I am that. That would be good, very good. But we have another stretch into oneness, and when we begin to build the antikarana towards the spiritual triad and the monad, and we begin to look at what's going to happen maybe at the third initiation, the monad is the one. There's only one monad in the whole cosmos. It's the one. And we say my monad, your monad, that's just the limitations of the mind. So the monad is the one, and we begin to feel it at a certain point as we begin to move towards the first solar initiation. Now, that's what we're talking about now. This is Leo. This is Sirius. Everything is getting very solar and very serious. Okay, forgive the joke. Okay, all right. So anyway, we're learning how to be solarized beings, and in this great oneness of the sun comes the realization there's only one identity. You think you have a separate identity. You don't. None of us do. We are just emanations of the one, and then we retract and realize ourselves as the one all over again. And maybe we're at that point where, having gone forth, we can, and now turned around, we've been the prodigal son. We've awakened out there in the field and seeing, eating what the pigs eat, and we've decided to go back to our Father's house. So maybe now we've turned around and we begin to sense what the real one is, as well as the many. Now, a mystic will long to know the one, but an occultist will demand of himself that he know the one and know the many at the same time. That's a hard job, and we have to do that. Okay, let's see. I don't want to overrun my time here. Let's see. Yes, I am that I am, this is from Cosmic Fire, refers to a man's monadic consciousness and his relationship to the planes of abstraction. What are they? The planes of abstraction are pretty well the monadic plane and the logoic plane. Those are the two really esoteric planes on our cosmic physical plane. It concerns his realization of his position in the planetary scheme. When the initiate can say, I am that I am, he has merged himself with his divine essence and is free from form. Now, I'm going glibly and rapidly over these points, but they really demand a lot of attention. When the initiate can say, I am that I am, he has merged himself with his divine essence, which he always is, and freed himself from a mistaken identity problem with his form. Of course, eventually he discovers he is form as well. So I am the one, I God. Okay? An ancient Atlantean chant. I am the one, I God. Very, very old Atlantean chant at the time of the third degree. I am the form in which all forms are merged. I am the soul in which all souls are fused. I am the one, and in that one all little lives remain. I am the life, and in that life all little lives remain. So is it possible, preserving one's sense of humility, to realize that one is the whole? You know that Leo has humility problems at first, right? It doesn't measure itself properly because the self is too large. But later the Libran influence comes in, and you begin to compare and you begin to see, and before long the big self in the middle of your field of consciousness starts to shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink until what you thought you were goes through a vanishing point, and suddenly the wholeness is there, and reveals to you that you are that wholeness and not the thing you thought you were. Now, most of us are suffering from mistaken identity, and it takes a long time of occult study and service and meditation to get rid of that sense of mistaken identity. So here, he's talking about the ancient Jewish seer here who said, I am that I am, and he expressed this kind of consciousness in a reasonable type of way. Anyway, it's a good point. Well, I'm not going to, gosh, there's too much to say and not enough time to say it. So let's just say that isolated unity is the consummation of the Aryan consciousness which all of us should be having. Isolated identity is related to the Atlantean consciousness from the angle of a higher correspondence, and you can pretty well see that isolated individuality, he would take it back to the Lemurian consciousness. Isolated unity is connected with the mental plane, is governed by the fifth ray of concrete knowledge or science, and is a reflection of the will to know. Isolated identity is connected with the astral plane, is governed by the sixth ray of devotion or idealistic sensitivity, and is a reflection distorted and unstable of the will to love. Isolated individuality is connected with the expression upon the physical plane and is governed by the third ray of active intelligence and is an expression, again distorted, of the will be. Well, I'm not going to necessarily get into all this. I just want to say this, that we are the one and the many simultaneously. And we are mystified and enthralled and mistaken to think of ourselves as an isolated individual. It's like the onion, you just have to peel away layer after layer after layer until you're left with what? You're left with nothing. Nothing at all. And as far as what we really are, we are pure being. We are finally the no thing, out of which all things come. Now, it's a bit of a scary process as you get rid of one thing you thought you were after another. Now, not this, not that, the old Sanskrit idea, neti, neti, not this, not that, not this, not that, until you're left finally with what you really are. You are left by being God, in a way, and it's been defined in this way. Pascal defined it, and I think he took it from a still older source, but God is an infinite sphere whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. So if you really start thinking about that, it really can, center everywhere. There's no place where God is not. You see, here we have Leo symbol with the sun, the idea of the point in the circle. The center's everywhere. The circumference is nowhere. There's no circumference. You are an absolutely infinite being, and going through these steps of I am that and I am that I am leads us into the doorway of discovering our true identity. So we get rid of all of that egotism, egoism. We even get rid of thinking that is there as you and I. Before you know it, we're into simply one being which we have to isolate every day of our lives, and even at night if we can, carry on the isolation of the one being despite all the diversity. So in the middle of what your consciousness tells you, which is filled with diversity, you isolate the one being all the time. And, if you're like me, you have to practice this. That's why I try so many word formulas and different ways of looking at it, so that it triggers in me the realization of my truer identity. So behind us is I am, with us is I am that, ahead of us is I am that and that I am, or I am that I am. And somewhere in this continuity of Leonian expansion, we find ourselves. All of this being fed by Sirius, the great star of initiation. And so we will learn eventually to isolate the unity at all times and be able to be practical about diversity, realizing that it's not real diversity at all, but it's the diversity of what we've arranged for ourselves by becoming the universe. We, the absolutely infinite being, have become the universe with all of its possibilities and diversity in order to create a beautiful creation, become a beautiful creation, and bring our idea at the beginning into some kind of consummation. And you know that Leo is a very creative sign, potentially, because out of me comes all things. All things come out of the one me, out of the one I. Naught is but me, and I am the cyclically creative being, expressing and becoming every possibility infinitely, without beginning, without end, and so forth. Well, I think, I was told that I had 40 minutes to speak on this subject, and I think I've used that 40 minutes. So if there are any, what I'd like to do is just entertain from the academic perspective, if there are any questions about this or your thoughts or whatever, and then we'll go into a little meditation, which will allow us to maybe experience at this time some of that sense of not being different from anything else. That sense of identification as all things. Notice, I don't say identification with, I say identification as. And you probably know why I'm doing that, right? Because if I say identification with, then I'm here and the thing that I'm identifying with is over there. So I've made a duality out of it, I and the other thing. But if I say as, I have looked at the equality of the two things, I as you as I. There's an equation there. We are the same. So, Christ knew this, and he expressed it in the, was it the 17th chapter of John? Was that it? And D.K. said that there was never a greater expression, at least in the Western world, of what identification is. I in you, you in me, I in thee, Father, they in thee, everybody in everybody else. Really important to get that, and still at the same time be very, very practical about handling apparent diversity. Okay, are there any questions or thoughts or comments that you would like to offer? I can take questions directly as if you raise your hand, or if you write them down or someone reads them to me, then I can do that, or any comments, whatever, because I think maybe we should, close off this academic side of it and then go into the meditation. So if anybody has any thoughts that you would like to offer, then I'm perfectly willing to attempt to make a comment about them. I can't necessarily answer correctly, but I'm happy to give you my response. Okay, so we have Risa, and go ahead, Risa.
Please do not respond to
Michael, I know that Risa sometimes has a problem with her hand automatically is being raised, so I'm not sure if it's...
maybe it's not a real thing.
Yeah, sometimes it happens, but
okay.
I want to encourage everyone to share your thoughts or questions, and you can use the function raise your hand on the control panel, or just write your questions and comments in the question section.
Yeah, that'd be fine. That'd be great. Such a subject, it's the main thing as far as I can see. Yeah.
Michael, if I would be allowed, I have a question.
Yeah. Alexander.
Last year, our small coordination group, as we were preparing the theme of the year for this 2016-2017 and thinking about the topics that we want to bring to the collective focus of the collective meditation. As a theme of the year, what emerged for us was the recognizing emerging light. And it's very interesting, in the light what you shared today related to Leo and Sirius, I see direct connection to that, because that was exactly the idea that we perceived that by recognizing emergent light in others, in order to recognize it, we have to have it within ourselves.
Yes,
And
yes, makes sense.
recognizing it in others, we connect with that light, and that's how we actually build the network of light covering the planet, by connecting with the same light in the others. So my question is to you, how do you, in relation to this theme of today, of the theme of identification, how do you see actually the process of externalization of the hierarchy happens? Because in our impression, it was part of this actual mechanics of the externalization of the hierarchy.
Well, I think, in one way it happens because the disciples become more filled with their own light of the soul, which Leo merges, which Leo rules. So how do I, see, unfortunately the people in our group here, I wish I could have them hear you, but it's about emergent light and how the externalization of the hierarchy fits with that, because in a way it is the hierarchy of light and love. So these particular qualities that we have that come from the soul reveal different aspects. What the next step is the revelation of the soul of the human being and the revelation of the soul of humanity. And the light of Leo and the light of Sirius help very much for us to focus on the real identity through spiritual discrimination or spiritual discernment and see beyond the lower level of Leo. See beyond and through the personality. And when we can do that, we'll recognize that we are surrounded by souls who are all in a unity. And if the souls of human beings can emerge, in a way, an aspect of the hierarchy is emerging as well. So in that light, we shall see light. We have to use whatever light is growing in us to see beyond what is obvious about the other person into the reality of the light within them, and then these lights will begin to merge. The hierarchy will be coming out and stimulate this light, and before we know it, we will have a very strong light demonstration between the carriers of the light. Every light reveals a still greater light. So, you know, the light within us has to reveal the light of knowledge within others, but also the light of love, and finally the light of will. So the more intense is the light, the more is revealed about our connectedness in the light. Now, I'm one of those people, and you know, who believe, look, the hierarchy will come out. They will come out in physical form, quite a number of them, but there's also the idea of the externalization of the hierarchy in the heart and mind of the disciples. And that is our condition as souls. If we really turn into souls in expression, then in a way, hierarchy is externalizing. Now, the technical part of it, of course, is that the actual masters will come out and walk among us, and so will the Christ. And that I firmly believe as well. But we have to give testimony to the souls we are by our own light demonstration and what it reveals about each other, how it reveals our unity, and eventually, if it's the light of life, how it reveals our oneness. That's my response to the thought. Obviously, we can go on about that subject.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay.
There are a few questions in there.
Okay.
So you can see them, right?
Okay. Oh, no, well, maybe you can read them to me. That would be easier for me, if you don't mind.
Okay, definitely, yeah. There's just a comment from Isabel saying, thank you, most inspiring and guiding presentation. Then another comment or question. Moria has an emphasis on occultism. Where is our emphasis on mysticism? It's coming from Joe Garcia.
Well, it's coming from Neptune, you know. Neptune, the great mystic planet, maybe the most powerful planet in our particular solar system. Maybe we are aware that the monadic ray of Neptune is the second ray, whereas the monadic ray of Uranus is the first ray, the occultist. So the real occultism will occur in the next solar system when these synthesizing planets are expressing themselves monadically. At least the first ray will be then. But now Neptune, I believe, is the great heart in a certain respect, and it's expressing itself that way in our present solar system. So we have to attune with and unite these two planets. Now I wonder if I can, you know, if I can just go ahead to kind of picture here. I hope I don't. There's one. A good one. Here's a picture of our solar system and the number of schemes that are in it. And notice that Saturn includes all of these different planetary schemes. This might be what you call esoteric Saturn. But if you look above, here is the occultist and here is the mystic. And we have somehow to unite these in our consciousness if we want to have that exquisite sensitivity of the mystic, like the Christ, and if we want to have the absolute brilliant, occult, intuitive mind like Uranus. That's where it really comes from. Now, Master Moria, he says, well, look, if you want to remember me on March 24th, Moria Remembrance Day. Well, that's Aries, isn't it? So what is the ruler of Aries? Hierarchically, it is Uranus, isn't it? So he's definitely identified with this occult electricity, with electric fire, but so much more as well, because he has great sensitivity, a lot of fourth ray and all that. But then we have Neptune the Christ, and somehow we've got to achieve the balance between these. Some people are along one line, some along the other. If you really want to be intelligent about how to round yourself out, bring these two synthesizing planets and their influence together in your life. And I'm trying to think about HPB's horoscope. I think that in her horoscope, both Uranus and Neptune were very strongly emphasized. I think Jupiter was with Uranus and Neptune is in a very prominent place as the esoteric and hierarchical ruler of her Cancer ascending sign. So put the two of them together. It doesn't come from any master particularly. It comes from the great planetary influences making us the rounded out human being, both Uranus and Neptune. Saturn, we just assume, had better be there. Okay, thank you. Let's see. Yeah, go ahead. If there's other questions, I see a hand raised, but you give me the questions first, and then I'll...
The question from Isabel. Regulus, the lawgiver for Sirius, could you develop this idea? And it comes from decay.
Yeah, he says the heart of the lion, right? And it's a 29, presently 29, what is it? Has it just moved into 29 degrees of Leo or something like that?
It's now in this 0 degree of
Virgo. Yeah. Okay. So, obviously this is a great first-rate constellation, Leo. And what do you do? Like he says, when Uranus is the ruler of Leo, the hierarchical ruler of Leo, veiled by the sun, you have to gain control first over yourself as a spiritual being. And then nobody else is your boss. The archetype is your boss, the spirit is your boss, the higher law is your boss, and Regulus is the planet which can be used along with Uranus to make sure that you have absolute willful control over your entire system without being subjected to external influences which tell you which way to go or not. So this is a question of developing extreme will. I think out of Regulus comes a lot of seventh ray and a lot of first ray, and out of Uranus comes first ray and seventh ray. It is a star and a planet of control. And if you can't control yourself, you can't control anybody. You know, it's like what the Buddha said, if you win the battle over yourself, if you conquer yourself, it's like one who has conquered 1,000 armies. So everybody gets a grip on themselves and rules from their inner spirit. That's what Regulus is all about as far as I'm concerned. Now, obviously, I could do a lot more research, and so could we all, and see how it works out in the lives of people who are prominent in their expression of will. Okay. Others, thank you. I see, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there is a raised hand, Antonella. So
yeah, I see that. I see that. Okay, Antonella, if you just unmute yourself, and if I can hear, all is good. Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. So thank you for your useful and beautiful presentation. Yeah, I mean, this idea that also the heaven, the sky is this sphere that our eyes can see. So what we see is a sort of representation of reality. So the fact that Sirius is also the brightest star in the sky is a sign that senses don't lie in a sense. And so my question is, if our son as a disciple is saying, I am that, I am serious in a way as his higher self, but he is also saying, I am that I am, who is in the sky that being that can represent in this reality, which is also appearance in a way. It's the one who nothing can be said, or is also a constellation like Pleiades or Great Bear. What is? And my question is also because this identity is also in front of us. That is my my highest recognition, I think.
This is a difficult question, a very difficult question. I just want to say that I'm going to turn to a page here in Cosmic Fire. All I have to do is find it. And it will give a sense of the ascension of certain beings. Okay, so I'm not used to this computer. I'm going to do my best here. It's going to be page 293. Okay, yeah. Yes, there it is. Okay, so there's that tabulation. And yes. We deal with the solar logos, the cosmic logos, and the unknown.
Yeah.
Now our Sirius is a solar logos who's part of this cosmic logos, and my impression is, I know not all people share this point of view, but I believe that Sirius may well represent the head center, the crown center of our local cosmic logos, which includes, you know, Procyon and Alpha Centauri and our Sun and Altair and a number of the local stars. So I think, for me, Sirius is so grand in a way that it helps you do more than say, I am that. Now, I don't think that I am that I am comes from any of these sources. This kind of unknown being here is our local, one about whom naught may be said, who is just a drop in the bucket compared to all the other ones about whom naught may be said, etc. Do you have to achieve that kind of consciousness to be able to say, I am that I am? I don't think so, because even the masters and even the planetary logoi are very far from being able to do that. So I think the influence that allows you to say, I am that I am, is, I hope I'm getting this correctly, is coming from our own monad, which is, of course, an extension of many things, but on our own little microcosmic level, we have to attune with that emanation within us, which is the monad, in order to say that. Now later, when we are initiates of the, when we are initiates beyond the 9th degree, we'll be able to travel to some of these star systems. And because that's our destination, we're going to go into the Great Bear or to Orion or to the Little Bear. Every one of us is going somewhere, and eventually, as a monad, we will all converge upon the Pleiades, which is the hub of the wheel. And maybe by that time, we will somehow be able to know what is the quality of consciousness and being that these huge entities confer. Meanwhile, I'm quite happy if I can be my own monad, know what being my own monad doesn't belong to me, and yet it does. How can I be that one being microcosmically and merge with all other beings? I don't have to go outside my solar system to do that. I don't think it comes from Sirius. I don't think it comes from any other place than the one monad that I am, which is identical with the pure being of the universal logos. So, the question you asked, I would love to have an hour to sit down with you and discuss this. But my idea here is that from none of these stars, like Sirius and Pleiades or whatever it is, that's not where our monad comes from. And that's not where being comes from. Those are just tiny, every galaxy is an infinitesimal. And these beings are not anywhere near the size of a galaxy. So they are just externalizations of the one being. And I cannot say that my being comes from them. Not at all. My being is absolutely fundamental to the universal logos which I am in every universe. That's where it comes from. And meanwhile, like Moria says, hail brothers, and in that salutation of daring, his ego vanished. The least of these turned to the morning stars and said, hail brothers. That's what they are. And they all come out of, if I can be allowed for this blasphemy, they all come out of capital M, capital E. They all come out of me. And they are manifestations of me. And that's just the way I see it. I know you could be burned at the stake, but, you know, that's how I see it. So it's been a long time since Giordano Bruno, you know, tried to say some things similar to that, and he didn't have such a happy fate, but okay. Anyway, you and I have some third ray, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, you bet. You bet.
There are more questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so it's from John Horan. Thank you, Michael. The ideas emerge so quickly as you speak. I'm reminded of the Rastafarian use of I and I in regular speech rather than the commonly used me. The idea is that we and all the universe are in reality one, or as it's written in the Bhagavad Gita, having permeated the entire universe with a piece of myself, yet I remain. So appropriate in the light of personality building Leo. So that's a comment from John.
Well, thank you. You know, I have a friend, well, I think I used to. Anyway, I have a friend, and when we're talking with each other, we only use the word I. We never use the word you. We always make it a discipline. Well, how am I? Well, I'm fine. How am I? And we go on like this, trying to induce the sense of the oneness between us. So it's kind of an interesting exercise, and I've often said that the word I is far more synthetic than the word we, if you use it in the right way. There's little I, there's we, group, and then there's ultimate I. And I like to think in those terms. Matter of fact, I've developed a number of ways of writing the word I. And my final way of writing it is nothing at all, okay? I mean, maybe it's got a couple of little quotes in it, but there's nothing there. And then if I get rid of the quotes, then I'll have what I want. So it all starts with little I, normal I, bolded I, then the number 8, then the bolded 8, then quotes with nothing in it, and then no quotes at all. So these are the different levels of I, and I think what we have to do with this Leo serious time is learn how to be a bigger, deeper, truer I than we have thought we were, and get rid of the mistaken conception of our limitations. We have limitations, and we don't have limitations. So let's have both, unlimited and limited, infinite and finite at the same time. Thank you.
There is a question from Risa. In the many crises occurring in our world today, how do we, as the new group of world servers, use this information in a practical way in service?
Well, we try to love each other because we're the same thing. How do we use, I'm talking to the group that's here, how do we use this information in service? Far out information, okay? But basically, you know, when you recognize that you are the very person you're fighting, that's a fourth ray recognition. He recognized that the ones he fought were but brothers and himself, you know. So you recognize that it's all one being, and then as a result of that, you're only fighting yourself. So you might as well be in harmony and oneness with the other aspects of yourself. You try to be inclusive because you actually realize that there are no different beings. So I would say that's the most practical application. When you realize the oneness of humanity, how can you be killing, destroying, maiming, and otherwise impeding the other aspects of yourself? I'd say that's the practical side. Risa. It's a state of consciousness, and out of the right state of consciousness will come right action. So let's have the right state of consciousness if we possibly can. Okay.
There is
Anything else?
a comment from Anne. Thank you, Michael. I'm very grateful for your teachings and feel inspired to keep trying my best. Wishing you every blessing.
Thank you very much, Anne. Appreciate it. And we have here some of your friends from Sweden, Marianne and Winnie, and they're waving to you. And if it's Ann Peterson who said that, yeah. Okay.
It's actually Ann Trucci.
Oh, Ann Tucci, okay. It's not Ann Peterson, it's Ann Tucci, but thanks, Dan. I appreciate your thoughts. I appreciate your thoughts. Thank you so much.
And there is a question from Jan Lucas. How might this understanding of Leo in terms of the individual be translated into the experience of a group unit of service, reaching those several steps of the Leo experience? How might that appear both similar and different?
Wow, that's a big question. Let's see if there's anything that I can, and that's from, let's see, who is it?
It's from Jean Lucas.
Jean Lucas, okay, so let me see, because I want to read that to my group here. Oh, that was Regulus, and let's see if I want to respond. No. Maybe I'm making it, well, basically it's how do you get this understanding of Leo in the individual to be translated into the experience of a group unit, see, and reaching those several steps of the Leo experience, how might that appear both similar and different in the group and the individual? Well, you know, we have the isolated individualistic groups. We have all kinds of them. We have the group that is reaching out in unity to other groups as members of the new group of servers. There's more and more of that. And then we also have the idea that a group realizes that it is simply an organism within this one whole. See, so let's first develop love and harmony within the group, which will fit it to be a externalizing ashramic group, a soul group, which will reach out in unity to other groups that have different functions and cooperate with them. In other words, DK said, you know, when you need one individual, I call upon that individual. If I need a master on the fifth ray, I call upon that master. It'll be the same for groups. If I realize my unity with other groups, then I need what that other group has. I'm in harmony with them. I call upon them to act in a certain way. They call upon our group, and we are like one united group that is in union with others. Now, as for the next stage, well, it's just an extension of group consciousness, isn't it? You know, it's like Gemini. I serve myself. I serve my brother. I serve the one. So if you can begin to see the oneness that is existing from your own consciousness, the group will reinforce that if it is filled with people who have a similar consciousness. Now, all you got to do, in a way, to see this operating is to go to the 14 advanced rules in the raised and the initiation. Let the group know the group knows, right? Not just the individual. Let the group know there are no other selves. Let the group know there is no color, only light. Then let darkness take the place of light, hiding all difference, blotting out all form. So the group consciousness knows this because it's a third degree group or beyond. And it's just an analogy. You can have group selfishness, group unity, and group oneness. So I don't see that it's a whole lot different. It's just there's a lot of work to do in a group to make sure that everybody shares that unity of consciousness and later the oneness consciousness, which is expected in the 14 rules when you read them later on. Even some of the arhats or masters could do well to fulfill some of those rules, which are really amazing. Best I can do on that. Okay.
Oh, thank you, Michael. I think time-wise we're getting close to the meditation.
Time for meditation.
But before we go into meditation, may I ask you just very briefly share with the group, if anyone doesn't know about the work that you do virtually and your webinars, so how can people learn about those and how they can join them, subscribe to your mailing list?
Right, okay, so we have, moriafederation@gmail.com. Just one word, moriafederation@gmail.com. And we have something called Constant Contact, and we're glad to put you on our mailing list, which would allow you to know about our pre-full moon webinars, which I present. I'll be presenting one tomorrow night. I don't even know the link yet, but I'll send it to you, Alexander, and if you want to, when I get it, and you can send it to people who might be interested. And then my wife Tuya generally does the full moon service meditation broadcast at the exact moment of the full moon. And we have other webinars that are going all the time. A lot of them are for the faculty of the Moria Federation, but here we're having an Initiation Mystery Week. It's for the Blue Rose Sisterhood, and webinars and broadcasts are coming out of that. And I'm going to reawaken, we have a group called Identify as Being. It's pretty descriptive of what we're talking about here. And we started webinars there. We have an email group on that. And I'm going to be leading meditations on the art of being, in which I do not, claim to be an expert, believe me. Master DK said, look, I am an initiate into the mysteries of being, and that should tell you something, he said. So we have a lot of webinars going out of the Moria Federation, and also on esoteric healing, on the book Discipleship in the New Age, and esoteric astrology, and these are not just closed webinars for Moria Federation students. If you want to join, you're most welcome. So just write to me at infinitize8 @gmail.com, or write to moriafederation@gmail.com. And we have also, and my wife reminds me, and I'm really an idiot here, the ASK project. We're doing 5 webinars a week, 5 broadcasts a week. And this, okay, every Wednesday, triangles. Every Thursday, the reappearance of the Christ. Every Friday, a glamour meditation. How could I forget? Anyway, thank you for bringing this letter to me. Okay, the glamour meditation, which Olivia Hanson, Tuya, and I have started rolling, and we are working on the group glamour and national glamour and world glamour of hatred and of separativeness at a time when we really need it. Every Thursday, invoking the soul. Every Saturday, invoking the souls of nations, another broadcast, and also every Sunday, attracting money for hierarchical purposes. How can you join? The best I can do with some of these things is write a little letter to Alexander, giving him the links for these, and I really should have had them handy, and I don't want to go looking right now. I'll write them to Alexander, and if he would like to share them with you, you're most welcome when you have time to join us, especially in this Ask project, which is invocation. Ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be opened to you. So we try to take these important areas that the Tibetan wanted emphasize, glamour and triangles and money and the reappearance of the Christ and the destiny of the nations, and we do that 5 times a week. So you're most welcome when you have time to join us. And sometimes we do it at 5 a.m. GMT, and sometimes the next week we do it at 5 p.m. GMT, and except when we just can't do it, we do it. I'll get it to you, Alexander, if you want to share with people.
Yes, thank you very much, Michael. And again, if any of you doesn't know about these activities yet and would like to subscribe, you can email us after the webinar. You will receive a feedback email from us. You just reply that email, and I will forward that information to you, how to subscribe.
Okay, that'd be great. Infinitize8@gmail.com, that's where I am, or the Moria Federation mailing list. You can be on that, moriafederation@gmail.com. So I guess it's almost time for meditation or a little alignment?
Yes.
Okay, let's do that. Well, the first thing would be to reach out to each other in the state of soul, trying to feel a unity with each other behind the obvious, behind the personality, scattered, whichever country, whichever place, whatever time, there's a unity, a soul unity. Try to open our heart and feel that connectedness in harmony. We're all seeking together to serve the hierarchy, to serve the Christ, to serve the will of the Lord of the world. That's behind all of what we're doing. And we realize that beyond the sense of isolation as a person is this sense really first of being unified with all human beings, whether in the body or out of the body. We try to visualize that. Wherever anyone is, it's all part of this same unity in harmony. We're all one being here. The sons of men are one, and I am one with them. So indeed, when you start to think this way, there is that which unifies us all in this field of harmony and unity. And I am that. Of course, we still appear to be what we are. Every entity appears distinct and having its own qualities. But there is this field of unity. And I as I am, you as you are, all as they are. We cannot really be separated. So as souls on the higher mental plane, we really are inseparably connected. You can feel it. You can even feel it in this meditation. And that's a big step. To live as a soul, unified with others you may meet, seeing and feeling and identifying the soul in the others and not getting trapped by just the appearance. But if we wanted to go beyond that, and we allowed the heart to open with respect to any perception, any content of consciousness, but, let's say first human beings and then everything else, we would identify a certain sameness. No matter how distinct, how different, whatever the quality of you or me or anybody else, beyond quality is being. The real identity. So it's not what you are, it's the fact that you are at all. That's being. That's I am that I am. I am that, and that am I. And it's almost like the qualities of you, of me, of anyone else just fade out beyond quality, which is utterly important, of course. Beyond quality is the raw fact of being. Of identicality in being. So no matter who you see, quality is one thing, harmony, disharmony, whatever, but being is the fact. And anything, anyone you see, perceive, if we could just simplify things, anything, anyone, shares identical being. I am that I am. So yes, you are who you are and who you appear to be in the world of illusion and the world of Mahamaya. It's all very necessary. And yet behind the whole thing is that one thing. As they say in the Divine Pymander, the only one thing. And, as it is said, thou art that. Tattvam asi, thou art that. And we isolate that. And if multiplicity obscures that, then we are failing in being. So, Here's all that multiplicity, and yet there is the continuity of that. Every day to be registered, every day. Don't be satisfied with yourself if the one unitive, identical factor is not isolated in the midst of all the multiplicity. Not just unity, it's very good, but synthesis and identicality, and finally, utter sameness. We get a little hint of isolated unity and we develop it. We get a little hint of I am that and that am I, and we develop it, and we keep going until it is an everyday reality. Then the non-dual life can be lived. We're all on our way, living in non-duality and handling multiplicity according to the divine plan under the divine purpose. Okay, friends, thank you so much. The full moon is coming up tomorrow night. I'll be doing the pre-full moon meditation, pretty astrological, at about 8 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, and then the next day we'll be starting around 10 o'clock here, finish time 7 a.m. GMT on the 18th, and we'll be doing the well, it's kind of a ceremony on the third initiation, but also the full moon, exact full moon ceremony. So I'll send these to Alexander in the group, and if you're interested, or you can write me infinitize8, number 8, at gmail.com. Very happy. Thank you so much, Alexander, and your group for inviting me and allowing me to speak on a subject that I really, really like. And I wish you all the best with your excellent work in preparing for 2025 and beyond. It's so needed to keep this in mind, and I've heard nothing but good things about all you're doing, and Tuya and I have been very grateful to participate as we have during the years thus far. So, bye-bye, everybody. All the best to you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much.
Thank
and
you. I'll send you the recording.
Yeah, thank you. And we will have the recording of this webinar. It will be shortly available on our website, 2025initiative.org. And now in the chat window, you can see the links to the where you can subscribe to all the webinars that Michael, Tuya, and Olivia together organize. And there is also a link to the previous webinars.
Good
Thanks
for you.
for Joe Walls who shared it with us, so that now you can see it on your chat windows. So before we close the webinar, you can copy those links.
Okay, thank you so much. That's great. Someone put them there. I don't know if Tuya sent them or you got them or how it happened, but you're ahead of me, and thank you. Okay, excellent.
You.
So I'll sign off without ending the webinar. I'll just sign off, and wishing everybody a wonderful Leo Sirius full moon. It's a great opportunity every year, and let's all get into being who we are under those influences. Take care. Bye-bye, everybody. I'll be going now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, Alexander.
Thank you, Michael. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
And we invite you to join our next webinar for the Virgo New Moon on September 3rd. And with this webinar, we'll continue our cyclic meditation project, where we will focus on the keynote of every sign, and we together meditate to strengthen the thought forms of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. It's a new project that we began in Gemini, and we invite you to join this webinar, and also we invite you to volunteer to focus one of the coming new moon webinars, leading the group in the new moon meditations. Thank you for participating today, and before we end, let's together sound the Gayatri. O Thou who gives the sustenance to the universe, from whom all things proceed, to whom all things return, unveil to us the face of the true spiritual sun, hidden by a disk of golden light, that we may know the truth and do our whole duty as we journey to thy sacred feet.